Okay, so I recently had the opportunity to watch a webinar hosted by the Southwest recruiting team, and it was all about the flight attendant career. I took notes, and I'm going to tell you all the things that they covered, all of the tips, all of the information, all of the, I was going to say tricks. I guess it's not really tricks, but all the things that you want to know. So if you're not aware, every single Tuesday at 12 noon Herb time, that's Central Time, the Southwest recruiting team, the people department, they host a webinar called Southwest Career Connections. And it's free, but it's not recorded. So it's right there in the middle of the day. And a lot of people, I know it's difficult for them to access the computer at that time. So what I do is I watch the webinar, take all the notes, and then make a recap video for you. So I am not affiliated with Southwest Airlines. I actually own a company called Flight Attendant Career Connection. No relation. But so what I do is I help empower aspiring flight attendants to reach their goals. Today's webinar was about the flight attendant career. So they were calling it Flight Attendant Spotlight. They had a flight attendant on there who had been a flight attendant with Southwest for a long time. I think since 2005, but he'd been flying for over 40 years. He was amazing. They had recruiter from the in-flight department talking, as well as the regular hosts who are also in the recruiting department. So I can't wait to dive in. So first of all, the first thing that they always do is they go over the benefits at Southwest. So one thing you need to know is the 401k match is a 9.3%, 100% match up to 9.3% of your income. So if you put up to 9.3% of your income into your 401k, Southwest will match it dollar for dollar. I believe that's the leading 401k match in the industry. And if not, it's still a really stinking good one. Also, flight benefits, you and your partner, wife, husband, domestic partner, travel companion, fly for free anywhere that Southwest travels as long as there's an open seat. And then that also goes to your children until they're 24 years old, as long as they're in school. Also, your parents get those flight benefits. After 6 months, you can fly discounted on pretty much any airline in the world. Almost, not quite, but almost. You can buy a standby ticket that's very, very deeply discounted. So they always there's one person on the webinar who used their Zed fares, which is the travel benefits to go to I think Italy, that they always like to talk about. So you can still see the world with your Southwest benefits. That's the point, which is really important to know. They also talk about the fact that within the culture and within the benefits that they're offering is a fantastic culture. They work really, really hard to support their employees, make sure that they feel the love. So that's something that they always mention as a benefit. And then, of course, health insurance, dental, vision, pet insurance is something that they also love to mention because one of the recruiters uses it for her two cats. So lots of really great benefits there besides just flying for free. So they always recap that at the beginning. Here is something, this is the first thing that they said. So during the webinar, I sit and I just take notes and I write down everything they say that is interesting. And sometimes they will say phrases a certain way, or they will say, oh yeah, I was talking with someone about that the other day and why it's important. And it's not actually in their itinerary. And so I always make sure I write it down, what they say. And so there's going to be some times as we go through this information that there'll be a little spark of this is important that they kind of set off the cuff. So want to make sure that if you want, you could take notes. I probably would be taking notes. I have a lot of notes that I took when I listened to them. But first of all, the thing that they said, they were talking about culture. So we know Southwest has a world famous culture. They worked really, really hard to make sure that they have a fantastic culture for their employees, for their cohorts is what they call their teammates. And one thing that they really broke down today that I hadn't heard before was there's kind of two parts to the company culture. One is the outside or the external, which is how they have all of the fanfare and all of the celebrations and all of the swag points and all of the warm fuzzy things that the company does to create a very supportive culture for the employees. But on the other side, there's a second part to culture, and that is the culture that each Southwest employee carries in their heart. carries inside of them. So it's them they've got the Southwest culture inside of them and they're taking it out into the world. So this is when we see the flight attendants making the sash for the birthday or the toilet paper veil for the bride. That's what they're talking about. They said that each individual has the culture, and that culture, and it's the culture that each employee carries within them. So I thought that was really interesting. If you're preparing for an interview, that might be something you would want to explore, about the way that culture is not just external, but it's actually something that you carry within you. And that is how the Southwest culture gets spread around. Okay, so I've got a couple screenshot slide things. These are they told us take screenshots, so I took screenshots. Here's screenshots of the questions that they actually went over. So we are going to also go over all of these questions. I wrote down the answers: how to prepare for the interview, do I need a passport, how does pay work, how does commuting work, reserve, timeline for training, what's PPST, and what should I expect from here to get to the interview. So that was one of the things that they went over. And this is actually their agenda that they do every week. So they do the culture, which we talked about, benefits, what to expect, which is kind of what we just talked about. Current openings. They didn't go over any current openings today. I think it's because we were focusing on flight attendant, but flight attendant's not open at the very moment. But they did kind of allude as to whether or not it will be open in the future. Okay. So that's coming. And then bases for flight attendants, So you see all that. All right. So let's go back. How do I get back to where I'm at? All right. So one thing that they said that I thought was important was they're going to be bringing more and more interviews in person this year. In fact, they have an in-person flight attendant invite only interview coming up at the end of the month on the 21st and 22nd in Dallas. Now, they did this at the beginning of June, and they had several hundred people come into Dallas. It was so exciting because this was the first time they'd gotten to do in-person interviews since everything closed down. So they had a huge day. I had some clients who attended, sent me pictures in front of the Southwest backdrop, got their CJOs on the spot, headed to training this month. So shout out to Elizabeth. So that was really, really, really exciting for me as a coach and as a flight attendant enthusiast, I was excited too. So they're doing that again at the end of the month. Now, these people that are being invited to interview right now, they applied in April. Okay, so before that, there was an opening in September of last year, and then April 2022. So they went through all the September people. Now they are on the April candidates. They got, let me see, I wrote it down. They got 12,000 applicants. So 12,000 applications, 12,000. And they go through every single resume. A human being looks at it. They don't have the software they don't use that software where you're trying to get the keywords. They actually have a human being that looks at every resume and decides whether or not you qualify. Another thing that the main recruiter for flight attendants that was on the call said was, we have 12,000 applications and we interview. What did she say? She said, and we will interview everyone who's qualified. So everyone who's qualified, everyone who kind of meets those basic qualifications gets at least a first step interview, whether it's phone, sometimes it's video, sometimes it's straight to these hiring events. All right. So it takes them some time to get through those applications. So that's where these people are that are currently, if you see on Facebook or, out in the worlds, people getting CJOs or which is conditional job offer, getting a job offer or getting an interview. These are people that have already applied. So that being said, most of their interviewing is still done virtually. All that being said, so more than likely, if you are waiting for an interview, more than likely you're going to get a phone interview, possibly and then a video interview. Sometimes you skip the phone. The video panel interview is not skipped unless you go to the face-to-face. But like I said, you can prepare for video. That's usually what happens. It is live. It's not pre-recorded. It is you, a recruiter, and a flight attendant on special assignment. That's why it's called a group panel, but there's really 3 of you. It's not a lot. It's not a very big panel. So you can kind of prepare for that. Ways to prepare for that. Check your lighting. Make sure your lighting's in front of your face, not behind your head. And then Southwest uses Microsoft Teams. So download Microsoft Teams on all your devices, your computer, your tablet, your phone, whatever you have. Because if for some reason your computer, I was going to say a cuss word, drops out on you, which is out on you, then you can jump onto your phone. Also, they said have a friend or family member download Microsoft Teams as well and do a little Teams call, do a little FaceTime call on the Teams just so that you can get to know it, practice it a little bit. Write down notes. So this is very specific to Southwest but they say bring notes. Okay, so that's what this means. You can have like on your notebook with you, you could have, they're not going to look at it, so you can have what you want. You can have like, you got this, babe, like you're the rock star if you need that. But you could also put notes about the core values, about the purpose, questions you want to ask, things you found interesting in the news, things that are important that you want to make sure you don't miss. You don't want them to be too robust. You really want them to be notes, like quick glance notes. But they said they love it when candidates have notes, and they totally understand how it is. Sometimes deer in headlights. Oh my gosh, I forgot. Let me just glance down for a minute. They love that. And they also love to see you writing notes while they're talking. Now, I say this is specific for Southwest because I know other airlines probably would be okay with this, especially with virtual interviews. But for example, Delta will take everything away from you when you go in. So you can't take scraps of paper or notes when you go into an interview with them. So that's why I think this is really kind of specific to Southwest, but they say it pretty much every week. So even if you're just writing like, you got this, boss babe, or, the sky is the limit, but not for you, girl, whatever you need, I would have a notebook and a notepad and something there because they like that. You get some brownie points. Why not get some brownie points? They also said to that point, if you get to the end of your interview and there's something that you didn't get to share that you really wanted to share, you could just say, and this is what they said, hey, there's one more thing I'd like to share with you if it's okay. And then they'll say, of course, and then you can share it. So that's another little hashtag like pro tip. After your interview, it takes 2 to 3 weeks to do background check. I think it's longer than that, but that's what they said. Here is something that they sort of off the cuff said. This is an interview question. I wish I had like a more sophisticated thing so I could be like, interview question alert. So the interview question is, what did you do to prepare for this interview? So what did you do to prepare for this interview? Great. What they were getting to is they would love to hear you say that you attended a Career Connections webinar and found it super helpful. But if you're watching this replay, I don't know if you actually have been able to pull that off yet. So if you did, great. If not, you research the company, talk to friends and family, who you could even say that you went on YouTube and tried to find some helpful information about the branding and how you can be the best candidate, things like that. Okay. Then they introduced Emmy, who is the recruiter. She's new to Southwest. She used to be with Compass and she said Frontier as well in pilot recruiting. And she said flight attendants are more fun than pilots, which duh. But I was like, that's cute. She was really cute. She was really fun. She was really neat. You could tell like super smart. And it was neat to have her on. I hadn't seen her before. She's newer to Southwest. So it was just really neat to have her on. And then also with her was a gentleman named Robert Baker. And I mentioned him earlier. So he's been a flight attendant for over 40 years. this is so he's been a recruiter for 10 years and now he works in the in-flight instructor too. So he's in SWAU, which is their training department. But what was so funny is he kept saying all of these like little jokes that are very standard jokes in aviation. But the other, like the people department people, Joy and Adam, who host all the time, they like hadn't heard these jokes and they were dying. So I thought that was fun because of course he's getting a kick out of it. Um, and so things like I'm a dinosaur, saying like, oh, I'm a dinosaur. I'm what they call a dinosaur, which is just slang for someone who's been a flight attendant or in aviation for a long time, kind of like senior mama or senior papa. So that was funny. I don't know, just like throughout, he kept cracking all these jokes that like, if you've been a flight attendant before or been in aviation, you've probably heard, but they hadn't heard. And they were like dying laughing. So that was kind of funny, but he was really fun. He brought a lot of course, the flight attendant brought a lot of sparkle and life to the webinar. Okay, so here's some of the things that they said. Let's get into the nitty gritty now. Job spotlight, flight attendant position. So here's the requirements. So the basic requirements, high school diploma or equivalent. You must be able to lift 50 pounds from the floor to above to shoulder level and able to assist. So most airlines do not require flight attendants to lift baggage during boarding. They are all required to assist or provide assistance. Pretty much every flight attendant is required of that, but there's a lot of gray area as to what assist means. At Southwest, assist means put their bag in the overhead bin for them. If you can correct me if I'm wrong in the chat down below in the comments, but at Southwest, they don't have that contractual out from helping with baggage. Okay, so just so that you know that. Then abilities. Here's where, so requirements, we kind of knew this. Abilities. This is when they start talking and you start getting some little clues. Work well with others, enjoy working on a team. So these are things they said. Enjoy working on a team, enjoy working with people from different backgrounds, and thrive and be able to be successful working with teams of people with lots of different personalities. Okay, lots of different types of people. That was something they specifically said. Then they also, here's some more things that they said. So you can jot these down as notes. They are looking for people who have a passion for helping people. And they're looking for candidates who are skilled and able to provide, write this down, legendary customer service and hospitality. So I love the word legendary. That's specific. So Delta is going to use like world class. Other places use elevated or elite, but we're seeing legendary here. So little star by that one. And then they're looking for people who are committed to the Southwest purpose, which is connecting people to what's important in their lives. And they made sure to mention this, which is very true, that connecting people to what's important in their life covers things that are exciting, weddings, bachelorette parties, birthday parties, once in a lifetime trips, and things that are difficult. Trying to make it to a bedside to hug somebody goodbye, trying to make it to making it home in time for a funeral. These kinds of things. These are the things that are important. Not everything that's important in our lives is happy. Important in our lives is such a great way to phrase what aviation is about. And then it can even be things like getting to go see a grandbaby for the first time or going to a job interview. Things that are a little bit like exciting and less life-changing at the moment. But these are things that are important. So that's what the purpose is, connecting people to what's important in their life. And then the skills. Here's some of the things that they specifically said about the skills that they're looking for. They wanted to make sure that it was clear that flight attendants work with the public and that flight attendants are the face of Southwest Airlines. That theme was repeated by several different people throughout the webinar. So jot that down, write that down. Southwest flight attendants are the face of Southwest Airlines. They're looking for people who are good at diffusing difficult situations, who are good at, who can work with customers who are demanding or difficult. They also, it's a requirement that you can comprehend and keep abreast of information, which, like, okay, so yes. This is something that they said that was important. He said that one of the recruiters said that the number one reason that people end up not being successful in training is because of attendance. Now, I think that is probably system-wide. So that's not flight attendant or in-flight specific, but that's important to note because attendance, being on time, not showing up to class on time, not coming back from breaks on time, not showing up to training at all, that's the number one reason that people are not successful in training. Okay, so I know we've all heard that it's the PAs and the city codes and the tests, but this gentleman said that it's actually attendance. So if you can be there, then, and you can be there on time, then your odds are really good. So, which is nice. Another thing he said is we're not setting people up to fail. Again, with training, that their goal is not to set people up to fail. They're really trying to make it so that that candidates are successful. They don't want to have a huge number of people who are not successful in training, because honestly, if there's a huge number of candidates of new employees that are not successful in the training program, then the problem is with the training program. The training program is not training the way that it should. And if it's a big enough issue, then the FAA will notice and will say, hey, dude, you're running an FAA certified training program for flight attendants, but you're not training flight attendants. You have more flight attendants failing out than passing. So maybe that's a you problem, not a them problem, and changes will be made. So once you're in training, they have invested money in you. They have invested time in you. They know they want you at that point. Like, they've already gone down on one knee. They've already said, marry me, marry me. So like, we are already at the point where they're no longer really vetting you or trying to decide whether or not they want you to be a flight attendant. They know they want you to be a Southwest flight attendant. Now they've just got to work with you to get you the skills you need to be able to do that. Okay, so now we're going to go over, after the little training pep talk, we're going to go after the frequently asked questions. So the first one, what can I do to prepare? So what can I do to prepare for an interview? They said research the culture. Research the culture. Okay, so core values, servant's heart, fun-loving attitude, warrior spirit. Those are the core values at Southwest. Also knowing what their purpose is, which we kind of already talked about. Their goal is to be the most loved, most loved, most flown, most profitable airline in the world. I think that's their current sort of goal. That's something else to know, and something to probably fact check me on, because I may have said it out of order. But one thing, so this is when the flight attendant was sharing, and he said that so this is real interview stuff. You're going to want to know the core values, research the core values, know the one that you identify with the most. Examples, he wants you to have examples from your experience. So this would be star format, examples of you using the 3 core values at work or in your experience, volunteer work, whatever your recent background is, or background. I'm not even going to say recent, background. Okay. Experience. Now, I have never had any client come back and say, they asked me, tell me about a time you used your warrior spirit. Tell me about a time you used your servant's heart. Tell me about a time you used your fun-loving attitude at work. I haven't ever heard it that literal, but I think that this advice is very, very good, because if you do use the core values and you use those to get your stories kind of like polished up, when they ask you, tell me about your most exceptional customer service experience that you've ever had, then you have like one that's servant's heart maybe, in the back of your brain, and it's already sort of polished up with some Southwest vibes. And so it's perfect to deliver. So examples using those 3 core values. He said the warrior spirit was, he wants to know an example of when you pushed up your sleeves and you got to work and you worked with your teammates and you stayed late and you worked hard and you went outside of your normal scope of work to get things done to support your teammates. That was warrior spirit. That was his thing about warrior spirit. And then he also had a thing about servant's heart. When did you use empathy? When did you use compassion? When did you bring humanity to a situation and serve someone in that way? And then fun-loving attitude. That one is the one that's the most popular. And I also think it's the most self-explanatory. So they didn't go into that one a lot. They're also going to want you to be ready to share customer service stories. So that's STAR format. If you need help with the STAR format, there's a whole training in the Flight Attendant Career Connection interview workbook bundle, which I'll link down below, that you can purchase. And it has over 50 interview questions, example interview questions, and 4 different training classes that will talk about all the different types of interview questions. And then there's also a separate class that's all about STAR format. So that is could be a good resource for you if you're struggling, if you're not quite understanding what I'm talking about, or if you're like, holy cow, I don't know how to do that. There you go. Now I answered it. I gave you the resource so you can continue on with your note taking for today's webinar recap. They want to know what you liked most about your job. They're going to ask you about service recovery skills. So that is, tell me about a time you had an irate customer. How were you able to solve the problem? Tell me about a time you were able to turn around a situation with a disgruntled customer or a disappointed customer. That right there is service recovery. That's what that means. And then they said that they don't even really care. How did he say this? So one thing that he mentioned was they want to ask questions, or at least one question. They want to know what you do when something goes wrong, because it's one thing to be able to prevent anything bad from happening, but in aviation, that's not an option. So are you able to, and have you been in situations where you've had to recover, or you've had to fix something when something went wrong? Either you caused it or someone else caused it. So that was another thing that they really mentioned. Okay, so that was the first one. That was, how do I prepare for the interview? Do I need a passport to start training? Yes, you need a passport to start training. You don't need a passport to apply or interview, but you cannot go to training. First day of training, they will ask you, he said at 5:45 in the morning, day 1, you got to have your, he didn't say it like that at all. But that's how I'm saying it, that you've got to have your passport in hand. So if you currently have an application in with Southwest Airlines, check your passport, make sure you've got 18 months or so left on it. If you don't, go ahead and get it done now, because she said, Miss Emmy said, that they've had people waiting, had to keep pushing training because they don't have their passport. They waited until they got a training date to get their passport. Don't do that. Okay, that was passport. Next, how does pay work for flight attendants? Okay, so I have a video. It's about flight attendant math. It's a flight attendant math video. It has equations. It has calculations. I'm going to link it down below because it will tell you what to do with the numbers that I'm about to give you. Okay, so you probably know flight attendants don't work 9 to 5 or 40-hour work weeks. But the way that flight attendants get paid is usually an hourly rate from the time the door shuts to the door opens. So, the door closes, you get paid flight hours. Southwest does it different, and they use something called Trip for Pay, TFP. Trip for Pay. Alaska does this too. Trip for Pay. So you actually get paid for, I think it's every 50 nautical miles, and it comes out to about 53 minutes. So once you do the math, there's an equation. I think it's like 1.11 or 1.14 that you multiply the Trip for Pay by to get the hourly rate pay. I go over that in the video, but right now their Trip for Pay is $15.30, I believe. So it's actually higher than that at the hourly rate. So that's fantastic. And then they do get paid. You get per diem. So per diem starts when you check in for your trip on day one at the airport, and then it goes 24 hours a day until you check back out at the airport. So if you have a 3-day trip, which is standard, check in at 8 a.m., check out on day 3 at 8 p.m., you've earned, I think it's $2.30 an hour, 24 hours a day for all 3 days. Actually, that would be 1 day, 2 day, like 2.5 days about. Okay. So that's, again, in the math video. And then flight attendants, Southwest flight attendants are unionized. I'm like, put your hand down. Flight attendants are unionized at Southwest Airlines, so you can find a link to their contract in the comments too. If you want some light reading tonight, you can read this legal document but it does have all the answers to pay and things like that in it, in the contract. Work rules, also information about training, things like that. Okay, so let's see the next one. The next one is how does commuting work and how does reserve work? Commuting. Flight attendants who commute. What that means, if you're a commuting flight attendant, that means you live in a different city than where you are based. So when I worked for PSA Airlines, I was based in a couple places, but I was based in Charlotte. And I lived in Charleston, South Carolina. Okay, so that's 3.5 hours driving, or it's also a flight. They flew from Charleston. It was U.S. Airways at the time. Flew about every hour and a half from Charleston to Charlotte. So I was a commuter. So that's what a commuter is. You live in a different city than where you're based. Most of the time, commuters get to work by airplane. Okay, that's what we call commuting. Everyone commutes to work because we all drive our car to work. That's not what that means. It means you fly to work. You don't live in your city and you fly to work. You commute. So Southwest has the best commuter policy, which means there's certain parameters if you follow and you end up not actually making it to work because you're flying standby, then you don't get in trouble. And that's in the contract. Most airlines, a majority of airlines do have a commuter policy, but they're all slightly different. Southwest is the most generous towards the flight attendant. Yay, which is great. That's what commuting is. So you do have to be in base 2 hours before either your trip starts or your reserve period starts. So let's say you go on reserve at 5 a.m. in the morning, you're probably going to need to commute in the night before. So if your reserve days are Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, you're leaving your house on Monday, and more than likely, there's a good chance that your last trip's not going to get in until late on Thursday night. So you're spending the night in base on your own in a crash pad or in a hotel, and then you leave Friday. So instead of just being gone Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, you're now gone part of Monday and part of Friday as well. So that's the thing about commuting. But the amazing thing is, what the heck? We can commute? You don't have to live, like your husband can have a job over here doing whatever he does, and then you can go be a flight attendant. Like, you don't have to move to Dallas. You don't have to move to Baltimore. You don't have to move to Chicago. You can be a flight attendant and stay in Omaha. Yes. I mean, commuting is hard, but holy cow, we get to do it. Hello. That's what commuting is. They did say that they will ask in the interview, will come up in the interview, whether or not you plan to relocate or commute. Southwest is pretty open to commuting. In general, you're going to want to say in a flight attendant interview that you are willing to relocate, because even if you're not planning to relocate, hopefully you have a willingness to, I'm willing to put my husband's clothes away after I fold them from the laundry. I'm probably not planning to, but I'm certainly willing to, if necessary. Okay, so that's one thing. But at Southwest, they're a little bit friendlier or more open to people not relocating. But they did say that if you don't plan to move, then they're going to want to know what your plan is to commute. So if you say, well, my husband has a really good job in Omaha, and so I believe that at least for the time being, I'll need to commute they're going to say, oh, okay, so tell me a little bit about your plan. And you're going to want to know, well, Southwest has 5 flights a day to Denver and 5 flights a day to Oakland. And I also, as a backup, could use Alaska Airlines and United Airlines. They also have this, that, and the other. I've already worked my budget to make sure that I can get an apartment in Oakland, in Denver, in whatever. So don't make it up. Go ahead and do some research. Find out where your home airline has access to on Southwest and other carriers. You know, most new hires go to Oakland, go to Denver. That's not unusual. So, you know, you can kind of focus on those in your research, but also know that you could be based anywhere, technically, that Southwest has a crew base based on need. But most of the need is usually in Oakland or Denver, at least right now. Now let's talk about reserve, right? Because that was the second part. How does reserve work? Okay, so I learned some things about reserve at Southwest here that I didn't know before. I had kind of heard it, but they broke it down so well. Here's all of it in one place. So some of this you may have heard too, but here it is in one place. So the top 35% of flight attendants in each base do not sit reserve. So it's not the top 35% of flight attendants system-wide, but at Baltimore, the most senior 35% of flight attendants, at Oakland, on their list, the most senior flight attendants, 35%, do not sit reserve. So once you get to that, so let's say there's 100 people in your base, once you get up to number, see if we can do that math really quick, 65, once you're number 64 in seniority, you don't sit reserve anymore. Now, of course, there's more than 100, so that was just the example. Now, the other bottom 65% share reserve. And as you get more senior, you actually are sharing less and less of the burden of reserve. So what is reserve? Reserve is, which they actually, I don't think they talked about what is reserve in the thing. So let's talk about what is reserve. Reserve is being on call. So when you're on reserve, you'll be on reserve for the month, and you will have a schedule that has your reserve days, the days that you're available. Southwest does 3-day reserve blocks. So in most months, that's 4 blocks, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday of every month, okay, for example. So you have to be in base before Tuesday so that you're ready, and you're waiting for them to call you. The least amount of time they could give you is 2 hours to get to the airport. So that's why they have that 2-hour rule, that you need to be within 2 hours of the airport while you're on reserve. Now, we have cell phones and stuff. You'll talk to senior mamas and be like, oh my gosh, I used to have a beeper. And then you'll talk to some senior mamas who are like, no, we had one phone in our crash pad and we had to call crew scheduling and say, hey, can I hop in the shower? Can you release me for 15 minutes so I can go wash my hair? And then they would say yes or no. And you would have, because you can't hear it, you can't hear the phone from the shower if it's a landline on the wall. What? Okay, but anyways, now we have cell phones, so you can just like go to the mall and like you can like go and do things or sleep or Netflix or whatever. So anyways, you're waiting, and then they will call you, give you an assignment, and you'll go work your assignment. It probably will change several times within those 3 days, adding things on, moving you here. So reserves are used when there's weather, when there's like a mechanical, like if a plane breaks and it's not in base, you know, then they've got to put reserves on the rest of the trip so that trip can keep going. And then, or sometimes flight attendants get hurt or get sick while they're at work. And so you can get called really quickly too. All right. So that's what reserve is. Your seniority determines how often you sit reserve, but all probationary flight attendants are sitting reserve the entire probation. So it's 6 months total, but the first 4 weeks is in training. So it's the next 5 months, you are sitting straight reserve. Okay. So you're sitting reserve every single month for 5 months. Then on that 7th month, because remember, at the end of 5 months, you've actually done 6 months because you had training. So on the 7th month, you kind of go into the pool, into the bucket where you're now rotating your reserve with your other cohorts in your base. Okay, so the bigger the base, the less often you sit reserve because there's more people to share reserve. Okay, that was something else he said that I was like, oh, okay, thank you for saying it that way. Appreciate that. All right. They also said, this is another little like jot this down that was off the cuff. A couple times I heard them talk about how the flight attendant job is a calling. It's really a calling. It's not a job. It's not a career. And it's a lifestyle. But they said several times it's a calling, which I 100% fully agree, because I feel like the flight attendant who is there when you are trying to make it to a deathbed, the flight attendant who is there celebrating with you when you're going to get married, the flight attendant who is there holding your hands when you're afraid, handing you tissues when you're heartbroken. There's no way you can do that kind of work and not be called to do that kind of work, because it's heavy work and it's important work and it is the basis of humanity. So it's definitely a calling. But I loved hearing them say it a couple times because, you know, there's another thing about calling. If you grew up in religion, you probably heard a lot about callings, especially if you were evangelical. You heard a lot about calling. And you heard about, you know, many are called, few are chosen, all sorts of different things about calling. But the thing about calling is it's something that's bigger than you. It's usually something that you can't actually do in your own strength, but you end up being able to pull off because you're pulling on a greater source outside of you, which is what you're doing when you're afraid and they're afraid and you're the one providing comfort. And a calling is also something that requires sacrifice, right? And so what they were talking about as far as sacrifice goes is knowing that you're going to miss holidays with your family, you're going to miss birthdays with your family, but you're going to be celebrating these things with your teammates. And that Southwest does that. They were trying to say like how you can kind of be excited about that too. Even though it's bittersweet that you won't be at home for Thanksgiving or for your birthday, you will be with people who you can still celebrate with, and you can still have a warm memory and a warm experience that is memorable for your holidays, your birthdays, things like that, even if you're not at home. So I thought that was very sweet for them to share it like that. All right, let's do the next one. Training. They said, when is the projected next time for training? Which was really cute because if you have been paying attention, Southwest has been training flight attendants like crazy pants for months and months and months and months. So there is no projected next training because there's just only training moving forward. But what he said, we got the details. So every Monday, 2 classes start, an AM and a PM. Every Monday, which means every week there are 8 classes going on because it's a 4-week training. And then every Friday, those 2 classes, they actually graduate together. So every Monday, and they don't see this stopping. Like they have no plans. They just are scheduled out to start flight attendant training, 2 sessions every single Monday. How cool is that? So any of y'all that graduate, if you want me to come to your graduation, I don't even know if they have it open for public or whatever, but you know, I love flight attendant graduation. It's the best. Anyways. So also after training, so training's not paid, but you do get a stipend upon completion. I believe it's $1,500. You get a check that's processed through payroll. So they don't hand it to you with your wings, processed through payroll. During training, they will fly you out there. They provide your transportation to and from the training center from the hotel, pay for your hotel, and they give you a food stipend. So they call it a chow card, but it's like a little Visa card that you can use at the grocery store, at restaurants. You can use to buy food, and it's loaded with a certain amount of money. It's kind of like a per diem type deal. So that is training. And then let's see what's next. The PPST, what's that? PPST stands for Physical Performance Standards Test. This is the last step before you do your background check and things like that. So this is after you interview. Now, if you go to in-person interview, they'll just do it that day. But if you do a virtual interview, then they will fly you out somewhere. They do them in several different locations: Orlando, Dallas, Denver, I think even Oakland. But they'll fly you out and host you for the PPST. They were joking that they tell people it's like you have to do like jumping jacks and flips. It's not. Here's what you have to do. So they set up a table and a chair or a table and a wall that's the width of the aisle on the Southwest 737. And then you have to face forward and walk down the aisle. Look at me. Do I look like, oh my gosh, I should be a flight attendant. You walk down the aisle. They want to make sure you fit down the aisle, turn around, walk back. Then you buckle into a jump seat, buckle into your jump seat. They'll show you how. It's not a test on whether or not you can use the jump seat. Okay, here's the thing. It's a double jump seat. That means 2 flight attendants. It's basically just a board that retracts up and then retracts down, and then you sit. Make sure there's not another flight attendant there. So when you're sitting together on the jump seat, you just sort of snuggle up next to each other and just sort of fit in your section. But when there's not another flight attendant there, they didn't say any of this. This is just me giving you some advice, okay? You need to make sure that you are not centering yourself up into the double jump seat, okay? Be aware of the fact that that you have half of that jump seat that you need to fit into, and make sure you're in that half. Some of the jump seats, because there's been a little bit of confusion, they've put masking tape in the middle, not like on the flights, I mean in the PPST, so that you can kind of see, so you can make sure that what size is that left haunch, saddles up to that masking tape, and maybe that right haunch laps a little more than the other way around. So basically, you just want to make sure that the buckle's going to fit around you. That buckle fit around me 9 months pregnant on a regional jet. That buckle fits you. You want to make sure when you sit and your booty spreads a little bit, that you're still kind of within your area. Okay, that's what you want to be focusing on, not as much the buckling, but where you're sort of centering your body down onto the jump seat. All right. Next. This sounds like a whole bunch of people fail it. It's not a big deal. It's really not a big deal. That's just the only thing that I've heard about that I just want to pass on. It's very easy. Most people are completely successful with it. It's not hard at all. It's really quick. And then the next part is climbing out the overwing exit. So they have an overwing exit. That's a window exit on the aircraft. They have a fake one, a mock-up, and it's clamped to the door. And so you're going to go through it. There's a couple different ways to go through it, to climb through it. My recommendation is body foot. So basically you stand sideways next to it. You put your foot over the door jamb, over the window seal jamb. And then you do your body, because now we've got one leg through and our body's over here. So then we're going to go underneath the top door jamb and then bring our next foot back up over the window door jamb. Foot, body, foot. There's other ways to do it. Some people just kind of step through. It just sort of depends on like how big you are, how tall you are, things like that. Okay. Rumor has it you can't touch it at all, not even your clothing. That's not true. If your jacket brushes it or something, it's not a big deal. I've even had some people who hit it, and they're like, oh my gosh, can I do it again? Part of that has to do with who your recruiter is, unfortunately, but you don't want to try to hit it, but don't freak out. That's the PPST. After the physical performance standards test. So there's no picking anything up. At Spirit, you have to pick up a suitcase, I think that weighs 50 pounds and put it over your head. You don't have to pick anything up. You just have to do those 3 basically body size and agility tests. And then that's the end. Some recruiters will tell you, great job, you all passed. Some don't. Not because people don't pass. I think it's just based on that recruiter. So if someone posts on Facebook, oh, my person told me that I passed, good. That's actually less usual. That's more uncommon than you being told. So usually you're not going to hear it until you get the email. So it's not a sign, is what I'm trying to say. All right, moving on. Okay, next, so we've done all of these. We did all of these. Oh, they said, what could you expect from the interview? But they were like, we already went over that, which they did. So, right, because they already told us a bit about the interview and what to expect. Now, they opened up the floor for Q&A. So these are the questions that they addressed that had been asked by people on the call. Okay, so if you have a current application, you're gonna totally understand what this means. they switched their application. The question was about switching that application over to Workday, but then they haven't received anything else. Are they still in the running? And Emmy, the really sweet recruiter that I just loved, I just really liked her. Anyway, fangirling a little bit, but whatever. She said, you're in the running unless noted otherwise, which is just perfect, right? So there was no glitches. There's just a lot of candidates. Next was about how much work history should you put on a resume. So ding, 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 write it down. Work history on resume. How much work history? Southwest requires 5 years. Did you get that? 5 years, 5 years, 5 years on the application. So we said that's a good rule of thumb. But if you need to go back further because either you've been like raising a family or doing something, going to school or something else for 5 years, you can go back farther. And then the flight attendant, is his name Robert? Yeah. Robert piped in and said, this is what I tell all of my people is if it's important or relevant, please put it on the resume, even if it's back farther. So like if you used to fly a long time ago, if you used to be in aviation, if you used to have a customer service job, but it's back farther, go ahead. My advice, this is Abbie's advice, which we have a resume class, a resume workshop that will walk you through it all. You can check out the link in the description. But my advice is to go back at least 10 years on your resume because that means it will work for all the airlines, even though Southwest does a 5-year thing. Go back 10 years, but he's right. If there's something relevant, either do additional experience and maybe don't flesh it out as much or put it somewhere else on the resume. But yes, don't just put 5 years and then just shut it down and like, we're done, we're out. Go ahead and be thoughtful about what you're putting on your resume, but it does for Southwest does need to go back at least 5 years, but I recommend just doing a whole 10 so that you have a resume that will work for any airline. Okay. Next, what if I made a mistake in my application? Date, a time, an address, something like that. There will be a chance for you to make that correction as you move through the interview process. Don't sweat it. We got you. As long as you're not trying to, this is what they said. As long as you're not trying to hide or conceal anything, you'll be just fine. You can make the corrections. What if, and then there was a question from someone who's in college and was asking about what if her training date coincides with her last semester at school, that kind of thing. So this would be if you have a job, if you're a teacher, if you have a wedding coming up, big vacation, you have something coming up and you may not be available for the next training date. What about that? That was what the question was. So they said you're going to want to share with your recruiter if you have a need like that, and more than likely they can move the training date because we have so many trainings coming up. So more than likely they can. It's not guaranteed. It's not for sure. Then Robert piped in and said, this is what you say. This is how you say it, which thank you, Jesus, for Robert, because this is how you say it. He's probably been asked inappropriately or like unprofessionally so many times that this is very clear in his brain. If it's possible, may I please defer my training date? All right. He was like, write it down. So I did, and you should too. If it's at all possible, may I please defer my training date? He said, if you say that to your recruiter or email that to your recruiter, they will 100% know what you're asking. So that's how you do it. That's how you do it, right? And, I've worked with lots of clients who do have things coming up, or even I have one client who is just trying to get through summer just to get childcare set up. Like it wasn't like this huge thing. And she was like, can I please just go in the fall? And they were like, yes, see you in September. So again, asking appropriately and asking sooner rather than later is also important. But yes, you can defer your Southwest training date. They're one of the airlines that are really flexible with training dates. Most airlines are not that flexible. Just FYI. Okay, just so that you know. So this is a little bit unusual, but it's very in line with the Southwest culture, though, to be accommodating like that. Okay, so they also wanted to make sure that we all knew about the challenges that a new flight attendant faces. So yes, I mean, definitely. Please know that being a flight attendant will take you away from home. You won't be home. They had talked about it earlier, but you will be gone from home for extended periods of time, 4 or 5 days at a time, overnight, throughout the month, that's your job. That's your new life, which is part of the reason that we do this. We do this because we want to travel, but I also think sometimes people forget that, oh, but I'm only traveling, which is different. It's a different lifestyle than just going on trips and things like that. They again reiterated that it is important that you remember that you are the face of Southwest. And this goes, every airline says this. So this is great for you to have in your interview arsenal, is that you are the face of the airline. Flight attendants are the face of the airline. They get to spend the most time with the customers. They have the longest face-to-face interaction. And that is why it is that much more important that they are able to show empathy, compassion, and customer service, hospitality, all of these things, because they're spending so much time with the customers. They said that it is important that you have a strong support system at home that understands what your schedule is going to be. Okay, so this one is kind of touchy because I do not endorse letting anyone hold you back. If your mama is mad that you're going to be a flight attendant, if your daddy is mad that you're going to be a waitress in the sky, if your husband, well, maybe not husband, if your boyfriend is big mad that you're going to be out, meeting all these guys, hanging out with pilots or whatever their little fears are, that does not hold you back from something you are called to do. And we already talked about calling. Okay, that doesn't hold you back. But what they are trying to say is having these conversations is important. Having conversations with your loved ones, with the people who do have that influence over you, is important so that they know what to expect, that you will be gone, that you will not be available for Christmas. That's not even true. We will be relocating Christmas. Christmas will now be on another day, the 27th or the 23rd or the 21st. Who knows when it's going to be? Christmas is relocated. We're celebrating my birthday on another day this year. I won't be there at little Johnny's first 1.5 birthday extravaganza or whatever. It's important. They said that you have a strong support system, but that's not possible for every single flight attendant. And the fact that your family does not fully support you does not hold you back from what you're called to do. It doesn't. It does not. Okay. I support you. I'm giving you permission. But if they are not supportive, it is important that you are aware of that and that you are ready and prepared, because it will be an extra level of challenge for you. It just will. And I hate that. And I'm mad at all those people that can't freaking support you. I'm mad for you, but that's just what it is. So yeah, when you don't show up at Christmas, not show up, when you can't make Christmas and you've told your mom and you've been a flight attendant for 5 years and she still acts freaking shocked. How could you ever work on Christmas? You just have to navigate that. But you can be your own strong support system. It's important that you know what you're up against. It's best if everyone supports you, but you can be your own support system. Okay? So don't let that hold you back. Like, yes. Okay. That's it of my little spiel for that. Again, 12,000 people applied in April for the flight attendant position. They're now down to about 10,000. So that means they've worked through 2,000 in May and June or so. That's about 1,000 a month. That's awesome. They said that they are not expecting to open the flight attendant application in the next 4 to 5 months. For at least 4 to 5 months, there's not even any consideration. So it sounded like it wasn't even on their radar. They were all like, we've got a huge bucket right here. Like, we don't know. I mean, we could kind of do the math and say, 10 more months, if they're going to do 1,000 applications a month, maybe 10 more months. But here's the thing too. So the last 2 times that Southwest opened applications, they were only for external candidates, not internal, which is actually really surprising for Southwest, because they usually open the job up to people who are already employees and let them apply before they let the external candidates apply. But they didn't do this the last 2 times. In fact, if you worked for Southwest, you were ineligible to apply. So you couldn't even apply. The reason that they did that is because they are just so short-staffed everywhere. They need to increase the number of people that they employ, not move people between departments, right? They just needed to increase employees, not relocate employees within the system. Now, they have announced though that they will be accepting applications from internal candidates later this year. So I do imagine that before this external one comes, maybe next April, next June, something like that, before that happens, we will see an internal posting, and all the people who have been waiting to apply, so all the thousands of current Southwest employees who have been waiting to apply, they will be applying. Okay. And so when they apply, then they'll have another batch of several thousand probably to go through. And then, so maybe we're looking at next summer, possibly, but who knows? Them accepting applications in September and then again in April was crazy pants. I've never seen it like that at Southwest. Normally it's a good 18 months to 24 months in between open portals. Now, they were super clear on this, and it's the truth. They will advertise it when it's time. So several days before, they will send out emails. Sometimes it's even a month. They will tell everyone internally. They will announce it. It will go out, and then the Facebooks and the emails, I'll email you if you're on my email list. Facebook starts blowing up about it. And the word gets out. Okay. So the word gets out, and then they'll open it for a certain amount of time. They give you the time to get ready, get everything prepared, and then they accept applications. Okay. So they also said that then at the end, it was like, so if you learned something today, if you applied in April and you heard something today that made you think, I don't think I can do that. I don't think I want to do that. Or I don't think now is the right time. Here's where you can go to withdraw your application. So I don't know. But one thing they said about that was, if you do withdraw, that does not affect you moving forward at all. So if you withdraw now, you can fully apply again later. They're not going to be like, well, why didn't you want it last time? It's not like that. Go ahead and withdraw from any of anytime you apply with Southwest and then realize this isn't the best fit. Is it the best time? Is it what I thought? Go ahead and withdraw. And as long as you respectfully withdraw, which is what they said, although, I guess you could disrespectfully do it by like sending them an ugly email, but just click the button, that you're totally good and you're totally, open to be considered the same moving forward. Okay. So that's the end. That's the end of the Southwest Career Connections webinar recap, unofficial recap, brought to you by Flight Attendant Career Connection. I'm Abbie Unger. Again, lots of links down in the description. I would love it if you would follow my channel, if you would subscribe, if you give me a thumbs up, hit a comment, something like that. You can share this if you have friends that are candidates or want to work for Southwest. Hopefully this was helpful for you. And I will see you in the next video.